Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Hey Queen session. I'm super excited about today, and we've had so many questions pouring in already. Today, we're speaking to Nicola Lopez-Rabkin. She is the co-founder of Hormonal Harmony, now being rebranded to Natural Fertility, and she is a Menstruality Mentor certified by the Red School. She also has a background in environmental science and politics. She's a really fascinating woman. I've been following her for years and I've learned so much through her posts and the wisdom that she shares. And I'm so excited that we're going to be able to chat to her and hear a little bit more about this work that she does and how we can embrace cyclical living and live in better harmony with our bodies. So I'm going to add Claire and Nicola into the chat and we're going to get going. If you have any questions, please pop them in the comments below. We're so excited to dive in. So let's get going. There we go. Hi, everybody who's popping in. Hello, beautiful woman. Hey, queens.
Hello.
We are so lucky and so excited to have you here today, Nicola. As I was saying before, there's so many people who have expressed so much excitement for this chat to hear your wisdom. So thank you for hopping on here with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and that's always great to hear that there's a lot of interest.
So to begin, if you wouldn't mind guiding us through a quick embodiment practice to get us all landed and grounded.
Sure. I would love to invite everybody to, let's start with a deep breath, inhaling and exhaling through the mouth. Let's let go of this day, this week, this moon transit. Take a few deep breaths. I would like to invite you to put your hands on your womb space. And whether you have a womb or not, we all have the energetic space of the womb. So to do that, if you don't know, I can show you. Your thumbs on your belly button meeting, and where your pointy fingers meet in a triangle, that's pretty much the center of your womb, uterus. And just by the way, if you put your pinky fingers, that's approximate position of your ovaries. So let's put our hands there. Take a breath deep into our bodies, allowing the belly to relax, to expand with each inhale, and to relax and release with each exhale. And when we bring awareness to this space, we are inviting information, downloads directly from the source of consciousness, as this is where all of life begins and where somehow magically consciousness begins to grow. And so we ask for tonight, for this evening's conversation, an openness, a willingness to hear something new, even though it may be jarring at first. We are inviting stillness and openness and allowing information to flow through us without judgment, without criticism, just being with what is present for us in this moment, noticing with awareness any difficulties or challenges that come up, and anything that resonates and feels joyful. So we can allow all that is to move through us in our womb space, which carries so much. Giving thanks for our beautiful bodies, designed perfectly as they are meant to be, working for us every day. Thank you, my womb, my heart, my mind, and every part of my body, every cell in my body. Thank you. And when you're ready, open your eyes and let's get stuck in. I'm tingling.
I feel ready. I feel so ready.
So Nicola, we'd love to hear about your journey. Before we jump in, please just tell us about yourself and what you do and how you find yourself to be in this space.
Yeah, so what I do, I'll start there, is I co-founded Hormonal Harmony almost 3.5 years ago. We're actually busy rebranding at the moment. So Hormonal Harmony is in transition. So what we offer is natural contraception, support with couples trying to conceive, natural alternatives for any hormonal issue, and cycle awareness, which is just living in tune with our menstrual cycle, but also the other cycles present in nature. So that is what I do. I'm also a mom, so that takes up a lot of my time. A mom to a 9.5-month-old. So that's where I am now. How I got here, my background, what I studied at university was environmental science and politics, and I did a master's in city and regional planning. I have never worked in any of those professions, but they inform a lot of who I am and what I do, and have given me an enormous amount of knowledge of how systems work, and how communities work, and how we can enact change in small ways. That to me has always been very resonant. How can I, since I was a small child, how can I make a difference in the world? And that's something that I live with every day of, what can I do? How can my actions serve the world? And it comes with, I think, quite a lot of, it's difficult to show up in that space every day because the world keeps telling us you can't do it, and war and destruction are the name of the game every day. But I think, it's just a part of who I am that I just hold onto hope. So how I got started on this journey particularly was I wanted to bring in pleasure, because that was a huge catalyst for me. At the age of 25, I discovered pleasure in a whole new way that I had never dreamed of. And I think pleasure is just so important as a gateway, and that's why I wanted to bring it in, is because we've been told that we function not for pleasure, that we function for work, or we function for stress, or pleasure is not a guiding light in our lives. We're not taught that. And at 25, I entered a relationship that taught me about pleasure and my capacity to feel pleasure, which I don't think all of these things would have fallen into place if I didn't love what my body could feel, and know that my body was built for pleasure, and aligning with that. And just, thinking about where does pleasure come from? What is it? and its relationship to the womb. And when I think about it, it's like the vulva, vagina, clitoris, cervix is like the gateway into the womb, which is the divine consciousness. But to get there, you got to get pleasure first. So I wanted to just bring that in to orient us and to remind us that that's why we're here. That's why we're in bodies, is to enjoy them. And I think a lot of us, a lot of women that I come across feel like their bodies are working against them, that their bodies hate them, and their bodies are trying to undermine them in some way. And that is not true. Your body is working for you every single day. What is not working for you is systems of power. Those are the things that are not working for us, that hate our bodies. And hating women's bodies is an old story. That is not a new thing. Hating women's bodies has been around for hundreds of years. Misunderstanding women's bodies and hating them for the power that we have. And there's this wildness aspect that men like to control, that they don't understand. Anyway, back to my story of how I got here. My work as I said, I studied environmental science. I was living in Berkeley, California, and when I was 25, and I discovered there's a few organizations. Tree Sisters is one of them. Bioneers is another one that I attended workshops and actually worked for Bioneers for a few months. And that was where I discovered this idea that women's bodies and the earth are one and the same, or reflections of each other. And that just blew my mind. It really blew my mind. And now it feels almost like we all know this, but it really touched me in a very deep place of what we're doing to the earth is a reflection of what we do to women's bodies, and vice versa. And it became apparent to me that working with our own bodies and not something separate. I think we look outside. We're like, the moon is so wise. I love the moon, especially, like in women's divine feminine space. It's like the moon, I love the moon, and I love the moon. But what we have in our own bodies is just as incredible, if not more, because it's our own experience. And so I had this, I started following the moon cycles, and I'm like, I love the full moons, and they have all of these different meanings, and there's so many lessons to be learned. And then realized that I have that wisdom inside of my own body and my own cycle. It was like, I am just as incredible as the moon. And the earth, our bodies are planetary beings, just like all of the other planets. We're made of the same stuff. Yeah. So that put me on this path of menstrual cycle awareness, of eco-feminism, and in terms of hormonal harmony and founding that, I co-founded with my mother, who has been an earth mama since the beginning, and she is a nutritional medicine practitioner. And she started to see in her practice, what is the common denominator between all of these women coming with autoimmune diseases, fertility problems, hormonal issues. And it's not just because you have a woman's body that you are sick. It's because we don't understand a woman's body, and because indiscriminately girls and women are put on birth control, pharmaceutical birth control, which has long-term effects that we don't even know. We're still in an experiment with pharmaceutical birth control, and nothing much has changed in the last 60 years since its inception. They're using the same technology. So she, at the age of 65, became a fertility awareness educator and reproductive health coach. Fertility awareness is a natural contraceptive method, and also can be used for conception as well. And more than anything, it's an incredible tool of monitoring your own health and empowering women to see what their own health is doing. Yeah, and that's, that for me is just such a beautiful tool, because women are not given tools to know what is going on with my body, what can I do to support my body. They're just given, go to the doctor and get the pill, or if you're 45, let's just take everything out. And it doesn't solve anything. Yeah, so that's what we've been doing for the past 3 years, learning a lot along the way, and getting our information out there. We're up against some big powers that be, but that's the work that we're here for. Yeah.
I'm so moved by the bigness of this mission. I think in recent years there's been a lot of social media and a lot more talk about womb work and cyclical living that's happening out there, but very few of the conversations are around this work being a work of activism. And I love that there's that element in what you're doing, that in coming home to our bodies, we are also reclaiming a lot more than just our own sovereignty, but also the sovereignty of the earth and our relation to it. It's so powerful.
Thank you for that reflection.
Yeah, and I'd love to ask, what is alive for you right now with the aspect of sovereignty in this work that you do?
Yeah, just thinking about the word sovereignty and what that means to me, and I think about, where are we giving away our sovereignty? Where are we taking action for ourselves, and where are we outsourcing? And not to say that we have to do everything alone, because that's not the answer. Community, we need our communities, and that's another passion of mine as a new parent. Like, we need communities. But where am I giving away my power? And in terms of womb sovereignty and living in tune with my own body's needs and the wisdom that is coming through my own body, how do I trust that it's real, firstly, and not, the whim of the voices in your head or your gut bacteria. So am I in tune? Am I balanced? And can I operate from that space? And most of us aren't. A lot of us aren't. We're giving away our power. I think a big part of where women are giving away their power is in a gynecologist's office. Turning to gynecologists for birth control. I personally don't think that contraception is a medical issue. I don't think you don't have to go to a doctor. It's not an illness. Fertility is not a disease. So why are we why are we going to doctors? We don't need to. Our bodies actually have a built-in birth control method or contraceptive method. The female body is only fertile for about 6 days of their cycle. Just to compare, male body is fertile constantly, very fertile constantly. So, that begs the question, why are we taking these very intense drugs to suppress our very being, to suppress our hormones, which are not just these annoying things that show up before your period? It's a complex system that is working with many areas of our body. It's not just about our hormonal health. Hormones are just messengers. They're just going around the body like, you need this, you need this, you need this. This is happening. And studies have shown that birth control actually can impact our intuition. It can impact our choice of partner, which I think is telling, not just about your partner, but bigger than that, your choices in general. It's been shown that you choose sameness, genetic sameness when on the pill, whereas what we're designed for is actually genetic difference, so that our children can be healthier. So stuck in a bad relationship, maybe try going off the pill. Couples have found, like, going on the pill, I hate my partner; off the pill, I love my partner. So that can impact, and I think it's like I said, I think it's bigger than just our choice of partner, but our choices. How's that impacting our choices? And systematically, women and girls are put on the pill. From, I've met women who were put on at 12 years old before they even started a period, for acne. And I'm like, acne is not, you don't need a steroid drug suppressing your entire system to treat acne, or to treat any of the long list of things that it's used for. It's really the only tool that Western medicine has to treat women's health. It's the only tool, and the other one is hysterectomy. So yeah, that's just medieval, and it's happening. It's definitely happens. So womb sovereignty for me means not being on pharmaceutical birth control. And that's not to say that people shouldn't make an informed choice of what is right for them at any time in their life, but there are the options, and people don't know that there are the options, and they're not empowered to use them. So like the fertility awareness method, it's not for everybody, and that's totally okay. But people need to be informed that it's an option, which they aren't. Yeah. And the other side of the coin is trying to conceive. We see more and more couples that cannot conceive without external help. And that to me is not sovereignty. And it's not to say that you can't choose to use that tool that's available. That's totally fine. But there's a systemic issue that's happening that we need outside intervention to do the most natural thing to create life. So that's what's alive in me right now. Any reflections?
I want to say that I so resonate. It's so interesting that I'm meeting you here at this part of my own journey, when I feel like in the last 2 or 3 years is when I've started having these realizations around the fact that hormonal birth control does things to my body that I don't even understand, but I can feel that it's not right for me. And I was one of those kids. I was put on hormonal birth control when I was 15 for my skin, and I was on it for a really, really long time, until I think I read Woman Who Ran with the Wolves, and she's talking about the power of connecting to your cycle. And I was aware that the cycle I was having was not actually a real cycle, but an induced process in my body. And that was when I decided I actually want to experience what it's like to be in connection with my period again. And I'm just remembering as well, I also had really bad period cramps, and any issue that you have, a gynecologist will just put you on the pill. And my mom had endometritis. So many women in my life. Even recently, I had a friend, we were speaking about issues that she's experiencing, and she said, I'm going to go to the gynae, even though I know they'll probably just tell me to go on the pill. And I was like, do you really want to spend the money to go when you know what they're going to say? We all know what they're going to say. And I remember being so shocked once in a gynecologist's office when I was asking about alternative contraceptive methods, and I was asking about the copper coil and the ones that weren't hormonal, and what other options. And he said to me, I don't know about those options. I'm a gynecologist. And I was literally like, what am I doing here? Yeah, literally. I was like, how could you not? You are dealing with women's bodies and you don't care about women's bodies. That's what
And
you
you don't
just
know how
told
they
me.
work. They don't know how they work. I mean, they like, I want to be kind, but I'm not really. My own self is not. I want to be understanding, but like really, I'm like, they're ignorant and willfully ignorant. Like it's their responsibility to not be ignorant, and they choose to stay in ignorance.
Yep.
And just a reflection on what you said about, the knowing that the pill was not a real cycle, and just to reflect on that taking the same amount of hormones every single day, that's what a male body does. Male bodies have the same hormones every day. With the sunrise, pretty much, their testosterone rises. With the sunset, their testosterone lows. So what the pill does is kind of put us on a male cycle. And I mean, if that's not giving off alarm bells that this is a patriarchal problem, then yeah, I don't know, because that's shutting down the woman's cyclical wisdom. Is that that's valuable. To be a woman is not to be a man. We're not equal. We're not the same. We're equal, not the same. And what is missing? Imagine the world if we were all in tune with that. So for me, cyclical living is a feminine way of being, and not to be like female and male or men and women. We can all live cyclically. We can all be aware and conscious and hold space for cyclical living. But the patriarchal linear system it's capitalism, it's white supremacy, it's environmental destruction. It's all of those things are tied into this linear way of being of like more and more and more and more production. And whereas a cyclical way is like, I'm different every day and I'm allowed to be different every day. And some days I get up and I'm not productive and I need to just be with myself, feel these emotions that I'm feeling, feel grief, feel loss, which our patriarchal society doesn't have space for. Yeah.
I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit more to, well, two things, but I also want to hear what Claire has to say. I'm just like so excited. I'm so sorry. If you could speak to what cyclical living is for those who are tuning in who don't know, and also to how else the hormonal contraceptive does affect our bodies. And there's some shocking things that women just don't know about.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll start there as soon as we're kind of on that topic. I mean, yeah, it depletes nutrients. So, and it's a steroid. So steroid is cortisol. And actually, I've been watching this Gabor Mate documentary, Wisdom of Trauma, and he was saying, like, you go to the doctor, you've got rheumatoid arthritis, you get cortisol. You've got digestive tract, you get cortisol. I'm like, say the pill. But, you go to the gynecologist, you get given a steroid. Everything answers a steroid. And that's not looking after the body. That's putting you in a state of stress that uses nutrients. Being in a state of stress is incredibly nutrient intensive. And already most of us in the modern world don't have a nutrient dense diet. So we're malnourished, which is why some of the reasons why we have hormonal symptoms. We don't have enough to go around. And then the pill is depleting those as well. And things like magnesium, zinc, B12. It impacts our gut microbiome, so puts our microbiome out of balance, which also then leads to vaginal microbiome out of balance, which is why you get things like UTIs and bladder infections and what are the other ones called? I can't think. Yeast infections, because those are all imbalances and our microbiomes all play in with each other. Yeah, it causes cell degeneration. So it can cause cell degeneration in the ovaries. It can cause cell degeneration in the cervix, cell degeneration in the clitoris. It's actually been shown to shrink the clitoris, which I'm like, if there was a pill shrinking penises, I think we would know about it. But we're
Yes.
shrinking the clitoris and no one knows about it because, women's pleasure doesn't matter. Like how many, if you were told at the gynecologist's office, take this pill, but it might shrink your clitoris, would you take it? I mean, maybe you would if you're stuck between a difficult situation, but I wouldn't. And that's coming back to the pleasure. It's like, we deserve pleasure. That is why we have bodies. Why are we doing something that's destroying our ability to feel pleasure? Never mind the impact of the pill on our libido, because it's not our natural hormones. So that's the greatest irony of the pill, is that, it's sexual freedom, but I don't want to have sex. That's a great contraceptive method, is not feeling like it. And that's not centering women's pleasure. And actually, I say that fertility awareness is a sex positive birth control, because it's not like, oh, you can just, dump your semen inside of me anytime you want. This is a conversation between myself and my partner. What do I feel like today? What is my body doing today? What are my desires today? Checking in with what are my hormones doing. And that to me is sex positive birth control, not something that just cuts off your libido. So those are some of the impacts of hormonal contraception. And then on the other side of it is the cyclical living, which is huge, also called cycle awareness, also called menstrual cycle awareness, which was coined by the Red School, Alexander Pope and Shani Wurlitzer. So I've certified with them as a menstruality mentor. So that's the practice of becoming aware of your menstrual cycle. What is every day telling me? And this has become quite, on Instagram, in the feminine spaces, the inner seasons, that was coined by the Red School. But it's so much more than that. It's so much more than what you can fit into a cute little Instagram diagram with 4 panels. It's really just it's checking in with myself every day and allowing myself to be with what is, to allow myself the transitions, to live in tune. And for me, it's my menstrual cycle, but what is happening outside in the world? What is happening with the moon? What is happening with the earth? How am I responding to this outer seasons, the inner seasons? And I have an example, actually, because I haven't had a cycle in 18 months since I conceived. And I'm actually trying to delay my cycle and using practices called lactational amenorrhea practices to delay my return of fertility, because I'm loving the space of not having a cycle. And I think having a small baby and having a period, I'm not ready for that. I might be almost ready. I'm getting to a point where I might be ready. But just another example, and how the moon impacts me as well. Yesterday, I had a day of fighting with my husband. And I realized at the end of the day, we always fight on the new moon. And so that's an example of how I have not been practicing my cycle awareness, because in cycle awareness, I know that the moon is coming, the new moon is coming, I know that my period is coming, so I can protect myself. So maybe that means when you're menstruating, you can take a day to separate from the world, to rest, to get in tune with that womb wisdom. I have not been doing that because I don't have a cycle, so I feel a little disconnected. And I'm like, this is why this is showing up. I don't have enough sleep, and now we're fighting. All of our fears and our projections are coming up, which happens in our premenstrual phase. That's the natural separation. It's an invitation into the world is too much, or the world is interfering with my natural process. So I've decided next new moon, I am booking myself an Airbnb, and I'm going to have my new moon day by myself. And that's, yeah, and like that's, if I am going to get my period back soon, then I need to be prepared. And so that's my small way of giving myself that space. And that's one example of living cyclically. There are many, and we can get into them if you want to, but I'll hear your reflection. See what Claire's got on her mind.
I've loved listening so much. I've loved listening to the duality of it all. So, for instance, we've gone into the patriarchal version of, just go on the pill and the gynecologist and just go get checked out and have something put inside you. And I'm sure it's far more detailed than that, but there's very much that version. And also with the pill, how there's breakout bleeds, they're not actually real periods that you're having, and the whole 28-day thing, like that might not be true to form either. And then there's the thing of actually coming into connection with your body and connection with your cycle and becoming into a space of engagement and empowerment with yourself as a natural being. And then in that, also becoming more in tune with, okay, well, my body's responding like this. That means now, if I need aid in something, I'm actually supplementing myself. Like when you have dry soil, when you have dead, dry soil, you start to give it the fertilizer, the microorganism, all the beautiful things that it needs to get it to be fertile, to get those beautiful things to grow. And you come into a relationship with yourself and your body and vice versa with your environment. And you even come into a relationship. I'd be fascinated to hear more about, the toxins, for instance, in our environment and how those things in our environment may affect us in a way of how they may affect plants. For instance, there's so much estrogen in the water now from women taking the pill and weeing into toilets that then go into water systems, that then come back into crops, that then go into food. And with the plastic that we're putting around our food, the amount of estrogen that's going into our food there. And even the estrogen, estrogen is such a big one, even the estrogen, how it's going into the ocean, and then now studies are starting to show that fish are conceiving differently and how that affects the environment and the food source and everything else. So it's so beautiful, this kind of eco-feminism aspect of how engaging with your body and your sovereignty and yourself and the empowerment of yourself directly relates to the well-being of the environment. And I think that is so fascinating, and it's so interesting to kind of tilt between, well, do I choose the patriarchal system of just going to see a gynecologist and putting my power of my body and my experience in their hands? Or do I actually start to get to know myself? And do I start to ask questions of myself of why is this happening? What's happening here? And it's such a hard place, especially thinking of women who aren't able to conceive when we're built for it. And then they work themselves up to this joy of conceiving a child, and then boom, it's not going to happen. And that is just such a tremendously difficult path. It's so tremendously difficult. And it also just goes to show the difficulty that we're grappling with in the world at the moment. So yeah, those are just, and also for me in my personal journey, I love the idea of fertility charting, because it means, if you're someone who's like, oh, my period, it's all over the place. If you actually start to chart your period, it's not all over the place. It makes perfect sense. And you're actually on time. And if there is like, maybe there's a short time span and you need to lengthen out and, to help with that, then to look into what is it I need to eat? What is it I need to do? How do I need to train myself to work on those things? Which are things I'm working on. And it's tremendously hard. I'm not disciplined and I'm not always engaged, and I do sleep in with this and that every now and then. Like it's really difficult. But yeah, I do find it all just so tremendously fascinating. And with my own menstrual journey, I started to have dialogue with other women about, well, what is your experience? Like I know with you, Nicola, and I know with you saying that you don't want to have your cycle come back too soon. Someone who doesn't know you might have some judgy thing of, oh, if she does work with this, why would she say something like that? But the fact of the matter is that you experience tremendous pain, and some women experience tremendous pain. And like me, for instance, when my cycle is out of whack, I'll experience it twice a month, and it'll be a heavy bleed, and then you start to really just like hear from women the real stories of what's really going on. It's not a perfect, clean cut, 28-day cycle, bleed 5 days a week, use a tampon and keep quiet about it. There's like a whole process to it. There's a whole eco-feminist, naturalist processed turd that we've just swept under the rug, and it's made the problems bigger. And I'm just so looking forward to hearing from you, maybe even just a little bit more about like actual cases with women that you have dealt with and what their stories have been and how you've addressed these things.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. That's great reflections, and I've taken some notes. The first thing that I want to say is that our bodies are feedback systems. So we are giving feedback to our environment, and we are getting feedback about what's happening. So our women's bodies are actually carrying this environmental load. We see it. I mean, everybody, all bodies are. There's this recent book released called Countdown about how these toxic chemicals are reducing sperm counts. But as women, we feel it because we get these symptoms. And what the pill does is suppress them. It's just, well, let's just ignore that. Let's just shut it off. But if we can start to learn the language, then we can give feedback and do the things that support us. And it's not an all or nothing. And I think that's what I love about cyclical living. And actually the Red School has this rule, they call it the 1% rule. It's like, what 1% can I do? I don't have to do it 100%. I just need to do 1%. So it's like a slowly unfolding. And the cyclical way of life is I'm allowed to make mistakes because I get another chance. I'm starting again. I'm constantly learning, recalibrating, and giving feedback, getting feedback. And I can talk also about my own journey and the things that I've done to get to where I am now. I always had painful periods from my first period until I was 28. I never went on any birth control. My mom was an influence in my life like that. She did once say to me, "You can go on the pill if you really want to." But I didn't, and I'm very grateful for that because I'm also one of very few people that I know who have never been on it. And I think that has put me in this position where I can be a leader. At the age of 28, I had an unplanned pregnancy before learning fertility awareness, just before, and I had a miscarriage. And that was, a portal opening for sure. I was listening to Samantha Zipporah speaking recently in a podcast, and she says, anytime the cervix is open, we have a direct channel to the divine. So every menstruation, our cervix is a little bit open, but miscarriage or any other termination of pregnancy, and of course, giving birth, is that channel is open between the divine. So I think that was a huge catalyst for me in this work, and also a realization of I really need to come back to my body. Like as Claire said, what can we do to support? How can we know what we need to support ourselves? And firstly is that we're expected to do it all alone, and it's really, really hard. And especially as women, I think we take it all on, and we're trying to do jobs and parenting and partnering and daughtering and taking care of my health. And I'm completely in control of it. And anytime I do eat the sugary thing, I'm a terrible person. But the fact is that we don't have the community support that we need to live healthily. I mean, I'm just right now completely overwhelmed with having to cook 3 meals a day. I'm like, this is an impossible task. It's like we're not meant to do that. And I'm like, as a new mom, I'm like, people should be cooking for me all the time. And if we were in a village setting, there would be people who cook, people who take care of children, and we would share that in a different way. But we don't live in that society. So, how can we reach out? Do we pay for these support systems? What support systems do we have built in? Family, friends? How can we all support each other? Because we can't do it alone. Something like, can we have a food prep day when, I do this with my mom, but you can do it with anybody, is, once a week or twice a month, I'm going to batch cook a whole lot of stuff. so that I can take care of myself, because it's impossible. It's really not possible to take care of yourself and live healthily all on your own. And yeah, like Claire said, you know, it's this interplay with our environment. It's what are we exposed to? I mean, a big one is food, but I almost don't even want to get into food because it's too big and so personal and such a fraught topic. You know, but it's what am I doing with my environment? Just the air I breathe. You know, our homes can be extremely toxic. If anything that's got a synthetic fragrance is an endocrine disruptor. So that's anything from makeup to perfume to random things that smell, is one of the worst things, because it's actually particles. It's actually plastic particles. It's called phthalates, and they're like that's what makes a fragrance stay. That's why like a perfume smells for hours, whereas an essential oil just dissipates. You know, so what air are we breathing? If you're living in a rural area, you're breathing in pesticides and herbicides. You know, so how can we breathe fresher air? You know, get outside more, get to the oceans, get to the forests, or have plants inside your home, or those type of things. What water am I drinking is a huge one. I've been seeing this going around recently of the plastic water bottles. You know, if you're drinking water from a plastic water bottle, you're ingesting an enormous amount of plastic. And that, like you said, is an endocrine disruptor, is an estrogen, xenoestrogens we call them, because they're not like our natural estrogens, but they block natural estrogen from doing what it needs to do. So like estrogen kind of gets a bad name, but we need it. It's a good thing, but it needs to be in balance. And then when we've got all these toxins, which are xenoestrogens, we can't detox them. Our livers get overworked, and yeah, and our guts destroys our guts as well. So all of these things are related, and really the hormonal system is, I call it like the cherry on top of our health. Like we're not going to have good hormones called hormonal health until our liver is functioning optimally, because we're detoxing every day, detoxing hormones, getting rid of them. We make and detox them every day. And our gut health, if we're not digesting food properly, if we're out of balance, then we're not going to have good hormones, and we need to be relaxed and in a place of not high stress and inflammation. And that also relates to blood sugar as well, because that can send you into stress. But like, you can't just treat a hormonal issue as a hormonal issue. And this I do see even in the functional medicine, integrative medicine world, is like treating hormonal issues with bioidentical hormones. But that doesn't solve the problem, because you're still outsourcing that. It's not addressing the root cause, because you can't treat a hormonal issue just by treating hormones. You need to look underneath that. Well, is there an issue with the liver that is causing that? So all the resources are going there to try and, you know, make that work, and I don't have anything left over, because the body is wise. The body's got its physiological design is intelligent, and it's not going to be like, oh, I got to have a baby now when I'm stressed. You know, not to say that babies don't happen in all kinds of situations, because we know that they do, but it's not in the design. It's like, if I don't have enough resources to make a baby, I'm not going to ovulate optimally. If I'm not feeling relaxed and like, oh, this is a good time to have a baby, then the body's not going to ovulate properly. And everything relates to ovulation. Like, you know, it's actually not the menstrual cycle so much, it's the ovulatory cycle. It's all about ovulation. And ovulation is what drives our hormones. So estrogen causes ovulation, and then after ovulation, we get progesterone. So that balance between estrogen and progesterone is extremely important. And that's what hormonal imbalance is usually too much estrogen, not enough progesterone. And both of these have incredible benefits for brain health, bone health, whole body health. We need those hormones, and most of us don't have enough progesterone. Yeah, what else? I wanted to just touch on, Claire, that you said, like, I'm so happy not having a cycle. Um, and isn't that hypocritical? And yeah, I do miss having a cycle on one hand, for sure. I love my cycle and I love my bleed. But I love this idea that came from the Red School as well, is that pregnancy, that firstly, okay, I like the saying, at menarche, we meet our power for the first time. Menarche, when we get our first bleed, that's when we meet our power for the first time. But most of us don't know what to do with it. We're not given a space to meet it. During our menstruating years, we practice our power. It's like every cycle, we get to practice again and again. And in menopause, we become our power. So that's when we can really step into ourselves, because we're not cycling anymore. So it's like the cycling is like we keep on going forward and back and forward and back, and lessons learned and lessons repeated, mistakes. And, it's this constant fluctuating, which, has its amazing benefits, but it also, keeps us in a certain way. And then at menopause, we can really take off with our power. And I love that, because menopause gets a horrible reputation. Most of us are dreading getting old. But this is an invitation to, I actually can step into my power at that point. That's when I can really, and I don't give a shit what anyone else thinks. It's that Gloria Steinem quote, one day an army of gray-haired women will take over the world. And just to bring that back, and what the Red School says is that pregnancy and postpartum is like practicing for menopause. So it's a powerful time of not having a cycle, is that we can firstly birth a baby. And then, right now I'm working on birthing another business. And I'm, want to use that power to get this business out into the world before my cycle comes back. And also, it's the day-to-day of having a small child and being, I'm very present every day with him. And we need that. We need that, like, getting up every day. Okay, I got to do this. I can do this. I need that energy to sustain me. And I know that some women are like desperate to get their cycle back after pregnancy, and it's like a release, and that's totally, whatever happens in your body is perfect. But yeah, I'm tapping into that power right now. That's where I'm at. But I'm also ready to meet my cycle again when she comes.
And I also love just to make a little note, because it very much relates to what we did last week. How, we started this conversation mentioning the patriarchy in a certain way, with a certain flavor and a certain tone. And at the same time, what you are expressing now essentially is building a deeper connection and relationship with your divine inner masculine qualities of yourself, the quality to hold space, the quality to hold space for your feminine to create. And that's really beautiful. And it's like how we were speaking with Chris last week, saying, everyone needs both. Everyone needs to build a relationship with both. So I love that in the absence of your cycle, you're able to cultivate a relationship and strengthen those other parts of you that maybe your cycle has actually, in a way, that process is such a big process. It's kind of taken all of you. Whereas now you can start to really land in parts of you that have been sitting and waiting to be strengthened, taking yourself forward with all of yourself in your full power. Like you're saying, experiencing yourself in your full power. And that's really beautiful.
Yeah, within the cycle in the Red School, they call it the via positiva and the via negativa. So the estrogen is more like that drive, and the negativa, the progesterone, is more of an inward. So within the cycle, we have both feminine and masculine, if you want to call them that, those energies. And we need both of them, but we also need the feminine way to balance out, for sure.
The symbolism of how estrogen is in our water and in our oceans and is everywhere and is in the Red School is that, like, masculine energy of energy and external being in the world, and progesterone is what's missing in our bodies, in a lot of women's bodies, and that like feminine within introspection. Just the symbolism of that is so powerful.
It is. I get shivers. Yeah. It's as within, so without. Yeah, and we're all divinely connected, and that's a tool of the patriarchy as well. Is disconnection, is separation from our own body's wisdom, separation from nature. And it's a tool of power. We know, to divide and conquer. But what we really need is to come back to connection with our own bodies first, and then with each other and with our environment.
Sure. As always, I feel like these conversations could that we just getting into the juicy things when we reach our hour. So I'm just curious, Nicola, if you could give the audience one piece of wisdom for this world that we're navigating, where we have so much pressure from gynecologists who are supposed to be experts on women's health and society and this patriarchal system. What piece of advice would you give to them? What wisdom would you give to them to navigate into their sovereignty?
I think the biggest thing is rest, is finding time for rest. In stillness is when we receive. In being in nature, in stillness, we can receive messages from water, from the earth, from our own bodies. But only in stillness, and it's really hard. It's really hard to find rest. And when we do want to rest, it's like, can I just binge watch TV, please? And that's fine. Like, it's fine. It's a process of getting to a place where, am I scheduling rest? And I think scheduling rest around the menstrual cycle, particularly during menstruation, there's this kind of, anything you can do, I can do bleeding. And I'm like, yeah, you can, but I don't want to. You physically can, but do you really want to? Is that what your body really wants? And rest is not available to everyone. It's not available every cycle, but finding those little pockets. Can I sit outside in the sunshine for 10 minutes and just be? Yeah, that's where the wisdom comes from.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing your passion and your knowledge and expertise with us. It's been so insightful, and I think so potent. I mean, even just that thing, if anyone gets anything from this, it's like that information around the clitoris. Like, I remember when I first heard that, I was like, how do people not know this? So I hope there are women who watch this who are more informed now. So thank you for hopping on here and sharing.
And sure. I just want to say I can regrow, so can regrow. Grow your clitorises, big clit energy forever.
Have a beautiful, amazing orgasm.
Yay!
That should be our hashtag, big clit energy.
Yes. Lots of love, sisters. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So much is popping in my space right now. There's so much more I want to express and ask and dig into. But to our listeners, find Nicola on Hormonal Harmony. She's going to be changing the name soon. If Nicola, you can remind us what that name is.
The new name is Natural Fertility and Thriving Health Community. We'll be launching in a few months.
Find Nicola. She's doing amazing work for fertility charting and hormone balancing and herbal remedies and all of these beautiful things. She's just absolutely incredible.
Thank you so much. It's beautiful affirmation.
Thank you, queens. Enjoy your evening, and thank you to everyone who joined in.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Bye.
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 Bye.